So I wanted to do sort of an update to the first video that I made about Kratom because I wanted to do one more into the style that I've kind of settled into, which is a more off-the-cuff style and more natural. So what is Kratom? Kratom is a plant. Um, it's a drug. It's a tropical evergreen tree that is native to Southeast Asia. Common places that it's found most commonly are Thailand and Indonesia and other countries around that area. And it has been used there for hundreds of years, most commonly as a recreational drug or um, for people who are weaning themselves off of opioids, stronger opioids such as heroin and opium. And why is this? So the main active ingredients in kratom are mitragynine and 7-hydroxymitragynine. Mitragynine is the most abundant, and it is an opioid. It is an agonist at the mu opioid receptors in your brain, which gives it effects similar to other mu opioid agonists, such as codeine and morphine, it provides pain relief, sedation, and euphoria. Um, so the difference is that these mitragynine, 7-hydroxymitragynine, do not cause respiratory depression. And respiratory depression is what happens when someone overdoses on heroin, for example, and what leads to death. Another difference is that it is much less addictive than the stronger opioids. In fact, people use kratom to get off the stronger opioids. Um, and there are some side effects. The most common side effect is nausea. This nausea can be quite debilitating. I know this from experience, and it's actually more common at very high doses. For me, it usually starts around 6.5 grams. If I take any more than that, I will get nausea. And what I take 5 grams. So some people take less, some people take more. People who take more are usually using it for opioid withdrawals. And what I use it for is it's an alternative to alcohol. I much prefer kratom over alcohol. And there's people who use kratom to get off alcohol as well, and other drugs, even tobacco. So I used to drink every single day. I used to drink 4 to 10 drinks a night. Some people may call that alcoholism. Since I started taking kratom, I've gone down to drinking 1 to 3 times a week. When I do drink, I drink 1 to 4 drinks a night. And if I drink any more than that, I get sick and dizzy and I get a hangover the next day, which I do not want to happen. So kratom is a safer alternative for me, and I much prefer it. I actually prefer the euphoric effects it gives. It's less debilitating, and um, it makes me less anxious. So I have social anxiety. Kratom kind of makes me more talkative and more outgoing. For example, I'm on Kratom right now, and I'll just ask you, do I look all messed up and drugged out? No. People don't even people don't even know. They can't tell. So Kratom is commonly available online and is also available in head shops and in gas stations, although I strongly advise to not purchase it from head shops and gas stations because they overprice it so much. You can get it much cheaper online. It's commonly available in finely ground powder, which is what most people prefer it in. You could also get just the chopped or whole leaves. And there's 3 main varieties: red vein, white vein, and green vein. There is also supposedly yellow vein and gold vein, and I just learned of chocolate vein. But I'm pretty certain that yellow vein and gold vein are just variations of white vein or green vein, just a darker color, and chocolate vein is probably a variation of red vein. And the way you take kratom is orally, you eat it. So I'm pretty sure the most common method of ingestion is the toss and wash method. So that is you weigh your kratom out with either a scale or with teaspoons. A teaspoon is roughly 2 grams. You just dump it in your mouth and swallow it with water. So this can be kind of unpleasant because kratom is very bitter and it's a bit hydrophobic, so that it tends to clump together instead of just washing down with water. So you have to drink a lot of water to get it down. You could also take kratom in capsules, and you can also purchase it in capsules, or there's some people who brew it into tea or put it in food. Um, so why has kratom become so popular? Well, like I said, people can use it to wean themselves off of stronger opioids. So the opioid epidemic. What caused that? Well, over the past few decades, there's been all these new prescription opioid pills just manufactured, synthesized, and improved by the FDA. And so people have surgery or they get injured, they get prescribed these opioids like Percocets and Oxycontin by their doctor, and even after they've recovered already, some doctors will still prescribe it to them. And because of this, people get addicted. So in 2016, these prescription opioids in the United States killed 42,600 people, and that's just in the United States. And there's over 2 million Americans currently addicted to these prescription opioids, and almost 500,000 Americans addicted to heroin. There's lots of anecdotal testimonies of people using kratom to wean themselves off of these stronger opioids like Oxycontin, heroin, um, Vicodin, which is hydrocodone, and even Suboxone and methadone, which is ironic because it's what Suboxone is what they give to heroin addicts to wean themselves off of heroin, and then they get addicted to the Suboxone. So there are people who use the kratom to wean themselves off of Suboxone, and because it eliminates the withdrawals when they try to quit the Suboxone. And kratom is much easier to quit than Suboxone. So because of this, because of its popularity, the federal government has taken notice. In 2016, the DEA came out and said, you know what, we're just going to schedule kratom Schedule 1 of the United States Controlled Substances Act, along with heroin. You know, even though they didn't do any research, they didn't do any testing, they just decided they're going to do it. So there was an outcry from kratom advocates, and we were so loud and we were so persuasive that they decided to just kind of back off and say, okay, we're going to give it some time and see what the research says and hear some testimonies from people on the pros and cons of kratom. And which was a good thing. I mean, we're safe there. So, but then in 2017, the FDA came out and said, so we haven't approved this stuff for human consumption. We haven't approved it for any medical use. So people should not be taking it. If you're in pain, take Oxycontin. If you're going through heroin withdrawals, take Suboxone, which is classic FDA. So the current FDA commissioner's name is Scott Gottlieb. Scott Gottlieb was an employee in the pharmaceutical industry prior to entering into the federal government. He was employed by Tolero Pharmaceuticals, Daiichi Sankyo Incorporated, and GlaxoSmithKline, who are producers of these strong opioid pills. So there's conflict of interest there. So the pharmaceutical industry has a very strong influence on the federal government. Another thing the FDA said was that there has been 44 deaths associated with kratom use. So they found these 44 people who had died, who had kratom in their system, and put out this list online for people to see. What they kind of glanced over and were hoping people would not notice was that all of these victims had other drugs in their system, including tramadol and fentanyl. So fentanyl is one of the strongest opioids. It's a synthetic opioid and is 100 times stronger than morphine. And there's a new version of it called carfentanil, which is 1,000 times stronger than morphine. Um, so it's kind of BS that they're saying kratom is so dangerous, we need to ban it, and these prescription opioids are okay as long as you have a prescription, even though there's millions of people addicted to them. So the fact that it's received so much demonization is not surprising, due to the huge influence that the pharmaceutical industry has on the federal government through lobbying and backdoor deals. It's not surprising at all. But the thing is, the United States Controlled Substances Act is unconstitutional. So the federal government, there's nothing in the Constitution that says that the federal government has any authority to regulate substances, whether it's a drug or whether it's sugar or beans or whatever. Some people will bring up the Commerce Clause and say that gives them the power. Well, the Commerce Clause is there to regulate interstate commerce when the states, so if there's two or more states trying to figure stuff out, the federal government steps in and has these regulations for them so they can so they have some guidelines. But other than that, it doesn't give them any power to regulate drugs. So it's unconstitutional. The existence of the FDA and DEA are unconstitutional, and humans, Americans, people, should have the right to ingest whatever drugs they want. It should be left up to us to decide what we want and do not want to take. And it should be left up to us to face the responsibilities and the repercussions of taking or not taking a certain substance. And it should be left legal, and it should be available to those who need it, to people who are looking for a safer alternative to, for example, alcohol, or for people who are weaning themselves off of these strong prescription opioids and heroin, for example. And the federal government's trying to put up a fight, and they're trying to basically save their bottom line because they know if people in vast numbers start kicking these strong prescription drugs, that they will lose money. And what's ironic is, even though they've come out and said that there's no medical use for this, there was a pharmaceutical company that was granted a patent by the federal government for synthetic versions of mitragynine and 7-hydroxymitragynine, which is similar to what they did with cannabis when they granted patents for synthetic versions of THC and CBD, which means they're hypocrites. So that's all I have to say about that. It should be left legal. We should fight to keep it legal. There's tremendous potential for this drug, and it can help people and it can save millions of lives. Thank you for watching.